taking up conversations to make sure that the child is safe and secure. Joining us this morning to have this conversation is Kenyon Onyeka, who herself is a nationally and internationally renowned poet and a child rights activist. Good morning, Kenyon. Thanks for joining us this morning.
Children's Day to the child in all of us.
How is Abuja this morning? You look resplendent.
Thank you. Thank you. Abuja is awesome. Abuja is fine.
Good morning, Kayan. Good to have you joined us.
Thank you. Good morning. Good morning.
So how do you feel today? Today is Children's Day. I know that your heart is a very childlike heart when we are talking about, some of the poems that you're sharing out of there. How does it feel to be in the spirit of Children's Day, knowing that you are a child rights activist yourself? How does today make you feel?
I feel really excited, and it's a feeling that makes me sit back and reflect because a day like this makes you think about the opportunities of children, what their future is supposed to look like, especially in the context of Nigeria. So I'm excited, but I'm also reflective of some of the opportunities for the African child or the Nigerian child, so to speak.
Excited but reflective. I think that's very, very instructive. Let's look at child right laws in Nigeria. Currently, where do we stand in terms of the laws for or against our children? How are things in the line of activism rather, for child right laws?
Okay, so for Nigeria, Nigeria has a law, has a child rights law that was signed in 2003. I think some states have been able to domesticate the law so far, Akwa Ibom State inclusive, and a few other states. But we also have states that have not been able to domesticate the law because of factors like religious factors. Because the child rights law, you know, really frowns on child marriages and such and all of that. And there are some states, that are a bit uh, very religious, such that child marriage and such things are not something they frown upon. So, in such states, some of those states, the child rights law has not been domesticated. So we still have issues of child marriages and such in all of those areas. And because that's a key clause, they overlook that and just do not even want to domesticate the rest of the laws that cater for the children and all of that. So yes, Nigeria as a country has a child rights law, but the way Nigeria is structured, every state has to domesticate the law for it to be functional in the state. So we have made some level of progress, especially around legislation, but all of Nigerian states have not been, properly catered for as regards that.
Okay, so like you rightly stated, not all of the Nigerian states have domesticated the child rights law. Do you think, we as a people who are interested in the rights of the children, are doing enough to ensure that, respective state government consider and prioritize the issue of domesticating these laws?
Okay, I'll tell you one interesting thing about being a Nigerian or an African. Sometimes we don't even think children have rights. That's to start with. So I was conversing with someone who was advocating for, they were trying to domesticate the law in their state. And according to her, she was saying a legislator was saying child rights. So you mean a child has a right, a child that's under my roof, all of that. So they had to, coin it to mean child protection, to make it more acceptable. So in the Nigerian context, we're still building up to that level where people realize that children have rights because they are humans. They don't even have to, be grown up to have rights, right to education, rights to free speech, and all of that and all of that. So I think we have to even begin to from that level to understand that children actually have rights. If in other countries they're even advocating for animal rights, how much more children? So I think that we have to actually begin from that place where we understand that children have rights, so to speak, before we can even, you know, amplify our level of implementation. So I think that's one of the things that has really hampered implementation. Some people just think they have rights to, you know, flog their children or do whatever it says, or just raise them however they choose. They don't realize that children, you know, have rights. So that's one of the things that has hampered implementation. So as regards implementation, we're making progress. We've had, especially with social media, when people amplify cases of abuse, some people have been arrested for either molesting or abusing children in one way or the other. We've seen arrests, we've seen, you know, all of that happening, but we still have a long way to go to really understand that there's more, you know, children really have rights, and such rights especially should be protected.
Mm. Okay, for Nigeria, 24 states out of 36 have given, have assented to that law in their state. So we have about 12 that have not yet, agreed to that particular bill becoming law in their state. And then when we are talking about child right laws, we're looking at the fact that it mandates that when a child is concerned, their best interest takes precedence. So it goes on to state that the parent or legal guardian is obligated to fulfill the duty to give the child basic protection. Like you said, in some states it has to be interpreted as protections to go down, well, for the lawmakers to take.
Yeah.
But some of, I want to list out some of the child rights so that people can also know exactly what we are talking about. So we are looking at the right to survival, the right to a name, the right to family life, private life. Now, when I saw private life, it reminds me of the advent of social media, where we see parents posting their children but blurring their faces. So sometimes you may not think it's really a big deal, but I think it's part of the child protection laws. We also see here right to dignity, recreation, cultural activities, health services, and education. Baseline needs of a child. But then again, what I want to ask, so far so good, in implementing these laws or even trying to get more people to buy the idea, what are the challenges that you as an activist and others have experienced on the field?
Okay. I think I must have mentioned some of the challenges, but I think I would just speak about parenting, especially. Um, it falls on parenting, because the very first contact and the very first custodian, even the law gives the parents custody, and rights over the child. So the very first custodian of the child is the parents. So in implementation of the child rights, it starts with the parents. Do parents even understand this law? Do parents even know about this law? Because what you don't know about, you can implement, right? So I feel that there's a high level of lack of knowledge as to the provisions of the law. For instance, we have had cases. We also work with Life Foundation with GBV cases. We have had cases where children are abused, either by sexually abused now, either by caregivers or uncles or something, and you would find parents trying to cover up these issues and trying to say, okay, I will not report it, or let's not report it, and all of that, because they are custodians of the children. And most times the law would require a grown-up to accompany the children to make reports. So when they hamper all of these implementation processes by not being forward, by not understanding their role as parents, it makes it very difficult to prosecute. Because if a child is saying I'm abused, or if a child is complaining at school and all of that, and you just go to the police alone, as a child, you won't have the courage. So you need the backing and the support of a parent or a caregiver to be able to process that. So, and like I said, I know that the law frowns on using children for trades or businesses and all of that, but we still see a lot of that happening in Nigeria.
Current economic
Because
realities.
Yes, yes. We still see a lot of that happening in Nigeria, even in schools where they say, okay, it's compulsory education, children are not supposed to sell on the street. You still see child merchandise happening, and across the street in broad daylight. So these are some of the challenges we're experiencing in implementation of the law, and then of course with law agencies. Sometimes there are cases reported and all of that, and people just say it's just a child. Your father was correcting you or something, because in African context we believe in, okay, of course, physically correcting a child, but there's an extreme. There's a level it gets to an extreme, and so when you report to some of these law agencies, they're like, but it's your father now. What do you want to do, and all of that. And then lastly, we don't have a structured safe haven to cater for. Say maybe your child is abused, or maybe you're supposed to take the child away from the mother for a while because maybe the place is not a safe space for the child. We do not have that facility, to properly cater for the child. Of course, we have orphanages, orphanage homes, and all of that, but that's not necessarily what I'm talking about. I'm talking about a place where you see a child, and the child is not growing mentally, is not growing well, is maybe under a circumstance of abuse. A
Some
safe
form
home,
of
a
social
safe haven
welfare
to be able,
homes.
yes, to be able to cater for children, because in the course of implementation, you will see children that are in the wrong spaces, especially for that time, maybe until the parents can get themselves together, heal from trauma and all of that. But we don't have that service to be able to take the child away and be able to, cater for that. So those are some of the implementation challenges that
That's a major
we're
need.
having.
That's a major need. It's
Yeah.
been so great talking with you this morning. I would have loved for you to give us like a 1 minute poem for the children. Do you have anything on your sleeve that you want to give the children this morning before we let you go?
Oh, really? I think I wasn't warned. I didn't see this coming. But let me see if I can do it. Let me see if I can do a freestyle. Okay. The child in all of us yearns to become an adult. And then when the child becomes an adult, the child sees that life is not all they say it is. And life has many colors, many stages, and many places to travel to. And once again, the adult looks back and wants to be a child again.
I loved
Thank you.
it. I loved it. I loved it. I loved
I
it.
was just rambling.
I loved it. But I loved it. The journey between childhood and adulthood, wanting, childhood back.
Yeah.
Absolutely loved it.
I think it goes back to what I said. I felt like just going back to being a child this morning.
Where
I
you're not
still,
the one worrying about the bills.
yeah, definitely. I just felt like going back. But thank you so much, Kay, and it's been wonderful having this conversation with you.
Pleasure is all mine. Thank you.
All right. Happy Children's Day. Enjoy the rest of your day.
Thank you. Bye.
Yeah, bye bye. Great conversation and very insightful, I must say. Even the poem landed very well for me. As a child, we all want to become adults. We are adults now. We all want to be children.
Oh
Everyone
my,
is looking for the balance in between.
definitely.
Yeah. So, and like the conversation we just had, it's important that we do not smudge the dream of our children. Let's give them room to blossom, and I think it will help a whole lot of us. All right, at this point, let's take a very quick break and then there's more to come. Our buffet table is full. Let's take a very quick break, and when we return, we'll be bringing you more on Rise and Shine Saturday. Do stay with us.